Hi guys, we are in the middle of the fourth chapter of the book India That Is Bharat by J. Deepak, and right now we are discussing how secularism and nation states came about from the Westphalian Treaty. The purpose of the preceding not so brief historical discussion, for which you'll have to check the previous video, the purpose of the preceding not so brief historical discussion was to demonstrate and advance the point that the Peace of Westphalia was distinctly Christian in nature, which has been secularized over time. In fact, while it is true that the Peace of Westphalia resulted in a transition of hegemony from the Habsburg Empire to the sovereign states, parties to the peace saw themselves as the Senate of Christian Europe. Thanks to their newfound status as states with greater sovereignty, if not complete independence from the Holy Roman Empire, European states were at greater liberty to assert and develop their respective national identities, quote-unquote national identities, based on ethnicity, language, and religious denomination, as well as to pursue their respective religious, economic, and political goals. The freedom from the vice-like grip of the Roman Catholic Church allowed the people to develop a closer connection with their states and their national identities, paving the way for greater crystallization of nation-statehood and the beginnings of European nationalism. In addition, since these states saw themselves as defenders of the Christian faith owing to the loss of the Habsburg Empire's monopoly over the faith, they developed their own competitive national systems of morality within and drawing from Christian ontology, epistemology, theology, and set their sights on acquiring greater resources to further their respective competing visions. Therefore, while Columbus's expedition began in 1492 and colonization by the Spaniards and the Portuguese had already taken root, the creation of sovereign states by the Westphalian Peace meant that there were more European states in the fray who now competed for the resources of the New World. Consequently, it came as no surprise that the new states followed the Spanish and the Portuguese policies of establishing colonies with papal benedictions. This spurred on the race for competitive nationalism and colonialism while remaining firmly within the Christian fold, a point which needs to be emphasized given the excruciatingly embarrassing contemporary tendency to secularize history. There is sufficient basis to conclude that these states were driven by interdenominational competitiveness. Remember this phrase, this is very important. There is sufficient basis to conclude that these states were driven by interdenominational competitiveness. So different denominations within Christianity, Lutheranism and Calvinism. Driven by interdenominational competitiveness triggered by the Protestant Reformation and the Peace of Westphalia, the New World or the non-Christian world became the battleground for this aggressive rivalry of wealth, territory, resources, and ultimately national denominational supremacy. These zealous colonizing ventures of the European states were funded by wealthy aristocrats in alliance with the ruling elite to preserve their positions within the states as well as to benefit from the expansionist colonizing vision of the Christian secular monarchs. That the alliance between wealthy aristocrats and the governing class gave rise to mercantilism, nationalism, and perhaps nationalistic mercantilism would not be an unsubstantiated statement to make. Some scholars believe that these alliances contributed to the rise of capitalism, which is still a visible feature of the Westphalian nation-state system, where those with capital work with those in power to preserve and advance national interest. Critically, there is a demonstrable nexus between the Westphalian state system and the standard of civilization as set by international law, which needs to be understood in order to appreciate its specific local manifestations in the political thought of former European colonies.